Today, we're diving into Elon Musk's potential role in the U.S. government and his ideas for making it more efficient.
Sounds interesting.
Our main source is a YouTube video from New Money called Elon Musk's Plan for the U.S. National Debt.
I've seen that one. It's pretty thought-provoking.
Definitely. It raises a lot of questions about government spending and the role of regulations. This deep dive is for anyone interested in government reform, Elon Musk's ventures, or the intersection of technology and politics.
Right, because it touches on all those areas.
Exactly. So let's start with the issue that Musk is trying to tackle, which is the U.S. government's spending habits.
The video makes a strong point that the U.S. government consistently spends more than it earns,
Leading to,
a growing national debt and increasing interest payments.
which puts a strain on the budget. Musk even goes so far as to say,
That the U.S. is on a path to bankruptcy if this spending isn't addressed.
it's a pretty dire prediction.
It is. The video uses an analogy to help explain the problem.
What's that?
It compares the U.S. government's situation to someone who keeps racking up credit card debt.
And only making the minimum payments.
Exactly. So the interest keeps piling up, making it harder and harder to get out of debt.
So the analogy is basically saying that the U.S. is stuck in a cycle of debt.
And that the interest payments are a huge burden.
Right. And to emphasize just how big of a burden, the video points out a pretty shocking statistic.
That interest payments on the national debt now exceed the entire defense budget.
Wow. That's a really powerful point. So where does Elon Musk fit into all of this?
Well, the video focuses on his potential appointment as the head of the Department of Government Efficiency.
Which they've nicknamed Doge.
Right. Musk's stated goal is to reduce the deficit through two main strategies.
Cutting wasteful spending and deregulation. Let's start with cutting wasteful spending.
Okay. Musk believes that there's a lot of wasteful spending in the government. He draws on his experience with Tesla and SpaceX.
Where he's known for being very focused on efficiency.
Exactly. There's even an anecdote in the video about how Musk insisted on removing the landing legs from a SpaceX rocket.
Just to save weight.
Yep. It shows his extreme commitment to optimization. And he's brought a similar mindset to Twitter.
With that drastic 80% workforce reduction.
Right. While that move was controversial, it does highlight Musk's focus on efficiency. Now, the second strategy, deregulation, is where things get more complicated.
Because it's a lot more controversial.
Yeah, Musk argues that the U.S. is overregulated.
Stifling progress.
That's his view. He uses a football analogy to illustrate his point.
Go on.
He says it's like having too many referees on the field.
So too many regulations are like too many referees.
Exactly. They slow down the game, making it harder to score. In this case, the game is innovation and progress.
And the regulations are the referees getting in the way.
Right. The video gives a real-world example of this.
The SpaceX Starship launch delays.
Yeah. Musk blames those delays on excessive paperwork and bureaucratic hurdles. He says the regulatory process involved so many agencies that it caused a cascade of meetings and paperwork, grounding the project for months.
Okay, so Musk's argument is that streamlining these regulations would lead to faster innovation and progress.
Exactly. He even suggests an interesting approach.
What's that?
Testing a leaner government framework. Basically removing regulations and seeing what happens.
And if there are negative consequences.
Then the necessary regulations can be reinstated. It's a bold idea.
Definitely. But it raises some serious concerns. Critics of deregulation worry about the potential negative impacts.
Especially in areas like safety, environmental protection, and consumer rights.
The video specifically mentions the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA.
Right. And how weakening their regulations could pose significant risks.
Like making cars less safe.
Exactly. So while streamlining regulations might sound appealing in theory, it's important to consider the potential downsides. Let's unpack this deregulation debate a bit more. Musk sees too much regulation as a roadblock to progress. He thinks it just creates unnecessary red tape that slows down everything.
Like with innovation and economic growth.
Exactly. He keeps coming back to those SpaceX Starship launch delays as a perfect example.
Right, where he says all those agencies got involved.
Yeah, and it just turned into a never-ending cycle of meetings and paperwork. The project was basically stalled for months.
Okay, but while that shows how regulations can get bogged down and inefficient.
Critics argue that they're in place for a reason.
To protect people.
Right. Think about things like environmental protection, consumer safety, worker rights. Regulations have played a huge role in preventing harm.
Making sure businesses act ethically and responsibly.
Exactly. To protect consumers and the environment from getting hurt.
So how do we balance those two sides?
Well, the video does acknowledge those concerns and says we need a more nuanced approach. It's not about getting rid of all regulations.
Just the ones that aren't working.
Right. The ones that are outdated, redundant, or just too burdensome.
Streamlining things.
To create a better environment for businesses while still keeping those essential safeguards in place. But Musk's idea of just stripping things back and seeing what happens,
Testing a leaner government?
it's a risky move.
Especially with something like environmental protection.
The consequences could be huge and really hard to undo.
And there are plenty of examples of deregulation gone wrong.
The video brings up the 2008 financial crisis.
Right, which was partly caused by deregulation in the financial industry.
So it's not something to take lightly. You have to really think about the potential risks and have a plan to deal with any negative consequences.
Musk keeps talking about transparency.
That's his big solution.
Open government, everything out in the open.
So people can track what's happening, spot any problems early on, and hold those in charge accountable.
It sounds good in theory.
Especially when it comes to something like deregulation, it builds trust. You can see how decisions are being made if there are any conflicts of interest. But is transparency enough?
To guarantee responsible deregulation.
That's the question. Don't you need some kind of system to assess the impact of those changes before they happen?
And to react quickly if things go wrong.
Absolutely. You need a solid risk assessment and mitigation strategy. Things like cost-benefit analyses, talking to experts, setting up clear procedures for monitoring and responding to problems. And then there's the big elephant in the room.
That conflict of interest.
Musk would have the power to change regulations that affect industries where he's personally invested.
Like SpaceX and Tesla.
Exactly. And his past criticisms of the FAA and NHTSA raise questions about his objectivity.
Those are the agencies that regulate his companies.
Right. So it makes you wonder if he'd really put public interest first or prioritize his own businesses.
It's a valid concern.
The video doesn't shy away from that. It acknowledges that there's a real risk when someone with that much financial power can influence government policy, especially in areas that directly impact their own companies.
It makes you think about who those decisions would really benefit.
It brings up fundamental questions about fairness and accountability.
So where does that leave us?
The video doesn't pretend to have all the answers, it just lays out the complexities. We want a more efficient government, sure.
But not at the expense of public safety.
Exactly. Finding that right balance isn't easy.
So if deregulation is so tricky, what are some other options?
Well, the video talks about something called evidence-based policymaking.
What does that mean?
Basically, using data and analysis to make decisions about regulations.
So instead of just going with your gut or what's politically popular.
You look at the evidence, you figure out which regulations are actually effective, which ones are outdated, which ones might be doing more harm than good.
So you can create a more streamlined and effective system.
Exactly. And it takes some of the politics out of it.
Because you're focusing on outcomes.
Right. The data can show you if a regulation is actually achieving its goals, or if it's just creating unnecessary burdens.
It sounds promising. But how do you make sure the data is reliable?
That's where transparency comes in. The video stresses that government agencies should make all their data and analysis public.
So anyone can check it.
Exactly. Independent experts, the public, everyone can scrutinize it.
To make sure the analysis is sound.
And that the conclusions are valid. It also helps build trust. People can see that decisions are being made based on evidence.
Not just someone's opinion.
Or some hidden agenda. But evidence-based policymaking isn't just about data.
It's also about people.
Right. You have to involve stakeholders.
Businesses, consumers, advocacy groups.
Everyone who might be affected by the regulations.
So you get a wider range of perspectives.
And you can anticipate any unintended consequences.
So you end up with regulations that actually work.
And that people buy into, which makes implementation smoother. The video also talks about the role of technology.
Which makes sense. Technology is all about efficiency.
Right. Digital tools can streamline processes, automate tasks, improve communication.
So you're reducing those bureaucratic inefficiencies.
And freeing up resources.
To focus on the things that really matter.
The video gives some specific examples.
Like using AI to analyze data.
Exactly. AI can sift through huge data sets, find patterns, generate insights that can help policymakers make better decisions. And then there's blockchain technology.
To improve transparency and security.
Right. It can reduce the risk of fraud and corruption, increase public trust. But the video makes a really important point.
Which is?
Technology is just a tool. It's not a magic bullet.
It's how you use it that matters
Exactly. You have to use it ethically and responsibly
to make sure it serves the public good
and doesn't create new problems.
or make existing inequalities worse.
So careful planning and ethical considerations are crucial. But even with the best technology and the best data,
You still need people,
right, you need a culture of efficiency and accountability in government,
a commitment to continuous improvement.
to data-driven decision-making, to collaboration,
It's about challenging the status quo,
questioning assumptions,
embracing innovation,
creating a government that's both effective and responsible,
one that truly serves its citizens.
while also fostering a dynamic and thriving economy.
It's a tall order.
It is, but it's a goal worth striving for.
So this deep dive into Elon Musk's potential role in the U.S. government has really been about something bigger,
It's about the balance between efficiency and accountability,
about the challenges and opportunities of government reform.
and about the role of data, technology, and most importantly, people in shaping a better future.
It's a complex and evolving issue with no easy answers. But by staying informed, engaging in these discussions, and advocating for a government that prioritizes both efficiency and accountability, we can all play a role in creating a more responsive and effective system that truly serves the needs of all citizens.